verse 38. Now it happened as they went that he entered a certain village, and a certain woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. And she had a sister called Mary, who also sat at the feet of Jesus and heard his word. But Martha was distracted with so much serving, and she approached him and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Therefore, tell her to help me. And Jesus answered and said to her, Martha, Martha, you are worried and troubled about many things, but one thing is needed, and Mary has chosen that good part, which will not be taken away from her.
If I were to ask every person today who is gathered here, obviously I don't have a spiritual x-ray machine so that I could take it around to every person and, number one, see whether you're a believer or not. Okay, that's totally between you and God. I could sort of see and sort of guess, but at the end of the day, God is the one who truly knows. But if I had an x-ray machine that I could take it around and be able to look at our hearts, how many of us could say that we are a worshiping Christian? Now, I'm not asking the question, when you come on a Sunday, do you sing the songs? I'm not saying that. That's an easy thing to do. A bit of peer pressure, possibly. And that is part of worship. But the far bigger question is, what do we do on a Monday or a Thursday that we would include in worship? And actually, if we push it to the end, everything in our life, everything should be part of worship. How you work at your job should be part of your worship. How you treat your family should be part of worship. How you treat your neighbor should be part of worship. How we treat our community should be part of worship. But today I want to think more about those times that we hopefully will maybe set aside to be able to be on purpose with developing our relationship with God. To recognize who God is and to be able to have a stronger understanding of our attitude towards God and maybe see ourselves in relation to who God is. Because I am truly convinced that as we understand God in a greater way, we'll see ourselves in a better and more proper perspective. And I'm not saying that God puts us down on some very low, on the ground, because He loves us dearly. But I think that the sin of the West, and we are in the West, the sin of the West in the 21st century is that of pride, thinking that I can run my own life and I am my own boss, I am my own king or my own queen, and I really don't need God. And the danger is this kind of thinking can creep into a church. So that we have a group of people, and I'm not saying that we do, so that we can have potentially, possibly a group of people who come together and really don't get what this is all about. So the challenge today is try and ask ourselves and challenge ourselves, where am I when it comes to this thing of worship? If we really don't have this as part of our lives, then it's possible to be setting ourselves up for ourselves to be something like a Christian robot. That someone maybe writes out some kind of computer program and they program us. Maybe at some point there was some passion in our life. Maybe when we first came to faith, But it has gone down to the point where we're just going through the motions. And if you've been a believer for any amount of time, that's a very, very real thing. There's nothing more exciting than to see new believers. And one of the reasons behind that is that everything is new, everything is fresh, and it's exciting. And some of the problem for us who have been down the road a few years is that we get used to it. Just like we mentioned last week about the bread. Remember all the bread, cooking the bread and the house. So the challenge is for us to try and keep as much of that freshness as possible. Wouldn't it be great, for example, wouldn't it be great if we could see people through God's eyes? Because as we kind of go through life and experience things in life, and people annoy us. Does anyone have anyone in your life? Don't raise your hand. Anyone have anyone in your life that say, that person really annoys me? Or that situation, or whatever. That person annoys me, what they do. I mean, I wonder how different we would be if we could see people through the eyes of God. I certainly know that for everyone, and there's been several of them, who have helped themselves to our trailers over the years, I became very annoyed and bitter, truth be told, about all those situations and whoever it was that helped themselves to our trailers there at the house. But I wonder what it would be like if we could somehow put on God specs, God glasses, to be able to see people as God sees them. Wouldn't it be great to serve with a joyful heart so that we want to please the King of Kings, and that's the only reason that we serve? Wouldn't that be an incredibly fantastic thing? Wouldn't it be a great thing if we could really get a heart filled with gratitude for being forgiven of our sins? Knowing that this earth is not all that there is, but there is an incredibly amazing place called heaven that is waiting for every believer. And that our time on this earth is just a whisper in relation to eternity. What would it be like if we really, really get a grip? And I truly think that all those things starts when we start to understand what worship is all about. As a matter of fact, the reason why I want to start with worship and not jump into fellowship or evangelism or service or disciple, all those sort of things, because I truly think that worship has got to be the foundation. Because I can tell you, hand on heart, that I've been through many times, of doing, serving, working, all these things that look great on the outside, but the problem is I was doing it all in the energy of the flesh, maybe for, well done, Eric, all those kinds of things. And there's nothing wrong with encouragement. There's nothing wrong with that. The danger is that if that is my priority and serving God is not the ultimate reason that I do what I do, then it wouldn't take much to put me off. Okay? It wouldn't take much to upset me. It wouldn't take much for me to say, that's it, I'm done. I want to look at a story here in Luke chapter 10. One of my favorite stories. And I know if you've been with us any number of years, we have probably been here before. And that's okay. And I have spoken on this many times in other places as well. And I have to keep bringing myself back to this. because I am so easy to, what's the word I'm looking for? Forget. So we're going to take a look at this in Luke chapter 10, verses 38 through 42. And we're going to sort of pick this apart, and hopefully it'll be a challenge and a blessing to you. We're going to sort of go by verse by verse, and reading from verse 38, but we'll pick up and sort of stop in verse 40, and we'll kind of sort of take a look at some things as we work on through. Okay, let's start again. Verse 38, Caroline has already read, but just to kind of get us back into it. It says in verse 38, "Now it happened, as they went, that he entered a certain village, and a certain woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. And she had a sister called Mary, who also sat at Jesus' feet and heard his word." All right, so what's the scenario? Jesus and the group entered into a house, and in this house there were two women. The names were Martha and Mary. You got it. And we're going to see that these women are very different in what they do. So we're going to start in verse 40, and we're going to look at what I'm going to call Martha's problem. Martha had a problem. Try to take yourself into that house. There's Martha, and we're going to discover what she's going to do, what she's doing. But first of all, where is Mary right now? Where is she? She sat down where? At Jesus' feet. Is that a pretty good place to be at, by the way?
Yes.
Yeah, you better believe it. That's a good place. That's a good place. Let's take a look at Martha's problem, verse 40. But, now the but shows a contrast. There's Mary sat at Jesus' feet, but when we come into verse 40, there's a big but. But Martha was distracted with much serving. And she approached him, she approached Jesus, and said, "Lord, do you not care that my sister, whom I love, has left me to serve alone? Therefore, you tell her to get up and help me." Now, is that a reasonable thing? That's a reasonable thing. It's a reasonable thing. Now, let's take a look at her actions first of all. Take a look at her actions. Verse 40 says, Martha was distracted. Now, the word distracted here literally means to drag around. To drag around. She was so involved with sorting things out. Now, it's possible that Jesus showed up unannounced, as sometimes he would, and Martha said, "Oh no, the carpet's not hoovered." So what does she do? Runs to the closet, gets the hoover out, plugs it in, tries to be quiet because there's Jesus coming through the door. My goodness. Maybe there's toys all over the place. Maybe there's some dishes in the sink that have not been washed. And she's pulling her hair out, and then she's asking herself the question, especially in that culture, when someone comes into your house, what do you do? What do you do? What do we do? What do we do? Would you greet them? And you say, would you like a cup of tea? But even more than that, they want to give them something to eat. Especially there's Jesus. He's probably been out working and serving and walking and all these sorts of things. And Martha's saying, "Oi! I have nothing prepared." So you can imagine Martha, hair boned out, probably in her cleaning up garb. Maybe she was doing some gardening. I don't know. Jesus shows up. Mary's sitting at his feet. Martha's going absolutely crazy. And that word distractor, he says, it means to drag around. I absolutely love that. To drag around. So I can imagine there's Martha grabbing something and maybe trying to drag and pull something over and trying to do all these things, and she forgot what it was all about. And she is focused so much with serving. With serving. That was what she was all about. Now, now please hear me. Please hear me. There's absolutely nothing wrong with serving. As a matter of fact, if we didn't have anyone serving, we wouldn't be able to do Messy Church. If there's no one serving, we wouldn't be able to do Sunday morning. If there was no one serving, then we won't be able to do the things that we do. So the question is not, is serving okay or not okay? That's not the question. One of the commentators that I read on this verse said that Martha was drug around, she was distracted, was so much serving, and he says that word has an idea of that she was distressed. Or in today's word, she was stressed. She was out of her brain in stress. Blood pressure over the roof. And here she was, face all flustered, cheeks maybe burning hot, with the biggest problem, not that Jesus was there, but she was doing all this stuff, and there was Mary. So here we go. As you can imagine, and if you've ever been a brother or a sister, or you have children, I remember very clearly, Dad, why isn't Chad doing his bit? Right? Remember them days? Why isn't Courtney doing her part of the pots, washing up the pots? Yeah, we do this as brothers, even certainly. And then Mary and Martha brought that into their older life. So Mary comes with this request. She comes with this request. She said, Lord, She says, Lord, do you not care? Now, that's a bit. So the accusation is that Jesus, you're sitting there. I'm here running all around, doing all these things. Why I'm moving up the carpet. Why I'm washing up the pots. Why I'm making sure the house is tidy. Why I'm getting all the food together. And my sister is just sitting there and doing absolutely nothing to help. So, what's happening here is that Martha is becoming bitter. And this is what could happen. Martha's getting bitter. She is saying, Mary is not doing her part. It's not fair. It's not right that I would be doing all these things and Mary is doing nothing more than sitting down on the floor in front of Jesus. Now, let me say this. That the issue here is not serving versus worshiping. Both are important. Okay? I hope you hear that. Both are important. A house cannot run if you let it go to pot, right? You need to tidy up. You need to do the pots. Okay? You need to cook. All these things are important, but the issue here at that time was about balance and priorities. Balance and priorities. And I know for me, sometimes I struggle with balance. At 60 years old, nearly, hopefully I'm better now than when I was 20 years ago. Hopefully. I don't know who I could ask to verify whether that's true or not. Hopefully I'm better with balance and priorities, but sometimes I know that I mess up. Martha expected, I'm convinced, she expected an answer from Jesus to support her. I'm sure when Martha said, Jesus, don't you care that I'm here doing all this stuff, all this work, and there is Mary, my sister, doing absolutely nothing. She's left me to do everything. Jesus, will you just tell her? I mean, yeah, she will respect your word. Will you just tell her to get up and come help me? I can believe that. I can believe that. So Martha fully expected Jesus to say, okay, come on, Mary, you've been here the entire time. Just get up and help your sister. Come on. Come on. I'm sure that's what she expected. But as often happens, Jesus does not do what people expected to do. He often will turn everything upside down in order to teach us something incredibly important. So we're going to come now to what we're going to call Jesus' answer. Come there. We're going to get there. There. Jesus' answer in verse 41. And I love this answer, by the way. I love this answer. This is another one of those times that I truly wish I had a video to know exactly what happened, because I've wondered so many times exactly how this worked. Verse 41, and Jesus answered, so he did answer, and said to her, Martha, Martha, you are worried and troubled about many things. Martha, you're stressed. Martha, you're just... He said, I love it, Martha, Martha. Now here's the video part. I really wish I could see it. I really wish I could see how it worked out. I wonder what was Jesus' voice like. Was he something like this? And we do this sometimes. Martha, Martha. I wonder. Was he something like, Martha, Martha, just stop! I don't know. I don't know. Always know, Martha, Martha. I wonder. And the issue is that just like Martha was so busy, she wasn't able to think about priorities. Who was in her house? Who was in Martha's house? Jesus. Jesus was in Martha's house. How many houses do you think Jesus visited during the 3 years of his ministry, give or take? Not many. He was out on the countryside quite a bit. A lot of people heard him, but to have Jesus in your house, that was a special privilege. Jesus was in her house. So we can get so busy, let so many things distract us that our priorities will get out of kilter. They will get all upside down. Jesus said, you're worried and you're upset about so many things. He said, you're worried and upset. He said, you're worried, and the idea behind that word is that the focus is on the inside. Martha, you're so agitated on the inside that even if she tried to sit down and focus, she couldn't, because she was so worried and agitated on the inside. And then the word upset gives us the idea of what she was like on the outside. Hair was all out of place. Cheeks flustered. Her mind and her body was just in such a state that Jesus obviously said, obviously you're worried and upset about so many things, Martha. Now, as Chad and Bethany's wedding gets ever closer, you kind of wind the clock back a while. And I know that when Lisa and I got married, I had this sort of visions of what married life would be like. As you do, right? As you do. And I thought, well, we would have these wonderful, perfect children.
You did.
See, it works. Who would never cause any bother. There'd be none of this all-night stuff, crying and whatnot, and this, that, and the other. And Lisa and I would be able to have these, 1 or 2 hour devotional times, totally focus on the Lord, and that all of life would be amazing. And, when real life comes, and then a child or two come along, you find out that sometimes, maybe even always, it's different than you thought it would be. And I know for me that being a box ticker, I like turning the crank and accomplishing things. Whether that's a bloke thing or just an A-type person, I don't know. But I love accomplishing things, to get that sense that I've done something. And the problem is, we often don't see worship and time with God as a priority for whatever reason. I don't know why it is. Maybe because for me, there's no paper that's written. There's no sermon that's written. There's no email that's sent. There's no form that's done. There's no report that's done. And I don't know what there is about it. But now I know that at nearing the 60 mark, that I have got to make my time with God a priority as part of who I am. Because doing what I do, it's very easy to say that, well, I'm doing a sermon, therefore I'm worshiping. Or I'm in an assembly, or I'm speaking on a Sunday morning. Yes, that should be part of it. But you can get into the performance mode and turning the crank, like I said. Mary was sat in front of Jesus' feet. Martha was worried and anxious in all these things. So my challenge, pre-wedding days, to Chad and Bethany is that you will, in your early years, make developing a worship time in whatever shape and form that looks like a priority. Bethany, do you promise, therefore, to do so? Chad, do you promise, therefore, to do so? Therefore, it's done, right? Why? Wedding's done. Let's go. And then we come to verse 42 as we finish this up. Mary's choice in verse 42. Martha, you're worried and troubled about so many things, but verse 42, but one thing is needed, and Mary has chosen that good part which will not be taken away from her. Verse 42. So Jesus said to Martha, as she was there upset, angry that Mary was there sitting at the feet of Jesus, Jesus told her, he said, Martha, Mary has chosen the important over the urgent. It was urgent in Martha's mind that the house be clean. It was urgent in Martha's mind that this lovely meal be cooked. And I think what Jesus was saying, listen, Martha, I'm happy to have takeaway. It's fine. The chippy's down the road. Get Chris to deliver it. It's easy. Right? You don't have to worry about all these things because Jesus is in the house. Martha, Mary has chosen the important over the urgent. And I think if there's one thing that if we can grab hold of the difference between the important and the urgent, then that's a huge, huge win. Now, I don't know if I think I may have shared this at one time, a long time ago. I can't remember. Remember when I had got my first car, and as a lad, and you get your first car, it's really cool. I mean, it was this red Dodge Plymouth Duster, big V8 engine. You start that thing up and kind of thing, really cool. It was an awesome car. I wrecked it, unfortunately, after I graduated, but anyway. So one day, I had my friend it was actually his wedding. And I knew that my red Plymouth Duster, and this is back in the day, do you remember, did anyone do your own oil changes? Did you ever do that? I know, you tried? Okay. Well, with this car, you can almost stand up underneath this thing, okay? It's one of those kind of cars. And so I got underneath the car. I said, I was due for an oil change, even though my friend was getting married on that day. Why did I do that? Because I thought it was urgent. Why, it was time to change the oil. So what do? You change the oil. Because I had plenty of time. I had 45 minutes to get to the wedding. Yeah. So I said, I've got 12 minutes. I can do this. Got my tools out because it was all together. Got my tools out, got my oil. This is the time when you had these tins. You had this little spout thing. You had to put it in. Yeah. Put the spout thing in. So got underneath there, took off that little oil, something, the little plug. Put that thing off to the side. Took off the oil filter, drained all that out, and made sure it was all that. Quickly got the new filter, put it up in there, got the plug in, and all of a sudden, put the oil in. I thought, 10 minutes, I'm doing fantastic. Went in there, fired that puppy up, and all of a sudden, couldn't believe it. Oil all over the floor. It was urgent now, but what was important was that I get everything on straight. And I'm not sure if you've ever done one of these things, but when you twist something on with threads, you can what's called cross-threaded. If it cross-threaded, that means it doesn't seal properly. And oil, if the oil filter is not properly screwed on, it won't seal, and all this oil will go psh, like that. And that's exactly what happened. It was important that I get the oil filter on properly. It wasn't urgent that I do the oil change. So I messed up the urgent versus the important. I messed up. There's nothing wrong with service, but what was important at the time? What was important at the time? Jesus said, Mary has chosen the good part, the good thing. Mary has chosen a thing that was good and important at the time when Jesus was there in the house and Mary was there sitting, listening to what Jesus had to say. Mary was worshiping. She realized she was sitting at the feet of God. And she said, this is what's important. And Jesus said, Mary chose that which is important. So when we worship, if we would understand the importance of carving out a slot, and maybe it's you if you go out for a walk and then you're listening to some music and you have some time with God. I know I've spoken to one or two of you, and that's what you do. That's fantastic. And whatever it looks like for you, but I'm simply saying that if the only time that we have with God is Sunday morning from 10:30 to 11:30 or something like that, then we're going to be spiritually anemic. So we need to, as we start this thing about what is church, we need to be able to grow in our idea and what we do about worship. Because if we're able to do that, then the likelihood that we'll be stronger spiritually, our spiritual skin will get thicker and tougher to the point, and what I mean by that is that when someone says something to us that we don't like necessarily, that we're able to sort of understand that and push it aside when our relationship is right with God. If we're able to do that, then things in life won't get to us as much because we'll have a perspective. We'll be able to handle it better. Whether your thing would be to keep a journal, whether your thing would be to listen to music, maybe to find a slot or a place or a time that is special with you. Maybe even want to write a letter to God. Who knows? All different sorts of things that you can do to grow that time of worship in your life. And if you would do that, regardless of where you're right now, if you have absolutely nothing, if you do absolutely nothing, then my challenge is to start something. Hey, we've got those Our Daily Breads in the back. 5 minutes, 3 minutes. You could read through that and spend a couple minutes just thinking. Maybe if you're doing that, maybe you can grow a little bit more and say, okay, I'm going to develop a prayer life. Listen, we have all kinds of things that we need to pray over. All kinds of ways that we can grow in our worship, because that is an incredibly important part of what church is all about. And is a foundation of how we can be strong.